Let's start out with the call to motion. There is but one presence
and one power
in the universe and in my life, God, the good, omnipotent.
First song is called I Am Light. It's on your song sheets.
Perfect song.
Thank you.
I was thinking about that today. This morning when I was meditating, I was encouraged to see light in everything. So whatever I look at in this world, somehow notice and feel the light. And then this song, so it's perfect.
Yeah.
Yes. We have light. It's sunlight.
Yes, the light is in everything.
Are there any announcements?
Can I do that? Yeah.
Well, yeah. She has an announcement, Helen.
I have an announcement, but it's not spiritual. I have at my house about a dozen, they're empty mahogany cabinets that were Victrolas that my husband had and never fixed. The good ones are sold. And I would like, I put it on Craigslist. I didn't get any answers. But they need to be made into cabinets. And I would bring one up on the curb and someone would take it, or else the garbage guys would mash it up. But if anyone has an idea about what I can do with them, because I don't want to just bring them to the dump.
Yes, or if you're interested in any, call Helen and you can ask for her number.
Yeah,
She's in Johnson City.
Johnson City, about a half a mile from Wegmans up the hill there. So
Okay.
it's easy, you go to Wegmans and come on up and see me.
Thank you. All
And you're
right.
also going to be selling a house, right? So we might as well put a blurb out on it.
You
You're
might be
also
selling the
gonna sell
house.
right?
Yeah, I'm gonna sell the house if I can get rid of the cabinets.
All right, so that's getting close.
Any other announcements?
So we have a tea party after service until 2 next door, if anybody wants to partake of tea and delicacies and baked goods. And we also have the Jazz Vespers today at 5 in the sanctuary of this church. That's today. And there's also a baby shower this afternoon around 6 for Mary Warren's upcoming grandchild, maybe great-grandchild. So that's happening. And then also at Hole in the Wall, there's a going-away party for Stacy. Anyone wants to come, potluck from 6 to 9.
Wow.
So we have a bunch of things
do,
to like play, a lot of play and fun.
And you're just supposed to bring a drink, right?
Yeah, you're just supposed to bring a drink if you want to bring anything to Hole in the Wall. And next week we have Jamie Walters speaking.
All righty. So now we have the new member welcome. We open our hearts and doors to new individuals and families. We know that the right and perfect people are joining us at the right and perfect time. Amen. Greet your neighbor.
And I always wondered like how that could be just because of the hardships that I had gone through. And then, so I hear that life is a gift, and then also from the Buddha perspective, life is full of suffering, and the goal is to become enlightened so you don't have to keep on repeating cyclic existence. So anyways, I was talking to someone about those two things, and then I stopped at the Chinese restaurant to get takeout, and I got 2 fortune cookies. I opened one of the fortune cookies, and it said, "Life is a gift."
That is so cool.
Synchronicity.
Yeah.
I guess it got verified for you.
Sherry?
Well, I had a
So
lot
cool.
of people going through so much this week, and I was trying to help them. And I think one of the things that it takes a long time to learn, but to be moderate, and I think the balance of things, so that, you know, if I type something that, like on Facebook, for instance, that's really happy, and people are saying, oh, that's not reality. Well, I'm thinking, of course it's reality to be happy or want to be happy or just to be happy for no reason at all. But they weren't having it because they wanted to be down in the dumps. They wanted to be, you know, it's good to feel my grief and sadness. And I said, but it's also good to be moderate because you don't want to ever get stuck there. That's not a place you want to get stuck. So you could feel your grief and your sadness and whatever it is, but you do have to, you know, be able to move on. So it was kind of interesting. They were irritated by me saying a statement of happiness. And I was saying, but the main thing is not to get stuck in that situation, to feel it. It's not Pollyannish to be happy, though. I think it is our gift. Like life is a gift. And I think it's always how we view things and turn things around. And I certainly had my share of tragedies in life, so I do know. But teaching people how to be moderate in their emotions as well as in life, I think in general, is a real gift in itself too.
And optimism.
And what?
Optimism,
Yes,
believing in
yes.
the idea that there is more beyond the ugly moments. Hope. And hope is vital.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Well, speaking of the gift of life, Joe and I have celebrated 22 years, so
Oh.
Tell him we applaud him.
thanks. Yes, Thursday.
That's great.
Oh.
Vera?
I forgot to mention, we have a board meeting after the service. But first we're going to do tea party for maybe 10 minutes or so or more, and then board meeting, so anybody who can join us. So,
Where's your board meeting?
right here,
Right
in this room, yeah.
I'm not able to go to the board meeting today though, because I have another meeting in Appalachian, but just so you.
Yeah,
So
thank
if
you.
you could send me the information.
I will, I'll send you the
Thank
minutes. Yeah. So I think it's nice to be able to have all different range of emotions, you know, like a whole package, and you don't have to get stuck unless you want to. I think we have full freedom. If you want to be stuck for a while, be stuck. If you want to get unstuck, get unstuck. But it's nice to have all of them without just being happy all the time. I find that more like strange or uncomfortable. But if that's what you want to do, you could do that too. It's, you know, we have that total freedom in many ways. Be whatever you are, and God loves you anyway. Whatever you are, however you manifest, you are loved and accepted. So you don't have to worry about it.
A lot of us learned in childhood, it's like, life is just a struggle, you know, and God will get you. But maybe, I think Christ's message a lot was, be happy, enjoy your life. Which is kind of, it's revolutionary. It's an internal revolution to really accept those words and grow from them and fulfill them. In my opinion. Anybody else?
Well, just what you said, Nichiren Buddhism teaches that you will have your struggles and your challenges, but the idea is to keep moving forward with hope and through that, and to count your blessings, essentially, you know, see the happiness in all situations.
And I'm glad you're going to be doing the reading, because I believe it touches right on there. So let's do the blessing of prayer requests together. God's
All-encompassing love is doing its perfect work in and through us. Wholeness is established in every area of our lives, and so it is.
Carol, can you read today's reading?
Sunday, February 9th, 2020. I am God's joy. The Apostle Paul declared to his followers at Thessalonica, yes, you are our glory and joy. I pause to remember relationships that have brought me joy, and I bless everyone who has shared those relationships. I share the good feeling that arises when people I care about let me know I have brought joy into their lives. Sharing joy is an important part of the human experience, and it has the potential to bring people together in spiritual community. Joy is an attribute of God and is a sure sign of the awareness of God's presence. As I grow in spiritual awareness through prayer, God's joy permeates my consciousness and infuses every area of my life. As I make a commitment to expressing joy, I become an ever clearer expression of God's perfect idea. Yes, you are our glory and joy. 1 Thessalonians 2:20.
Thank you.
Joy. We are God's joy.
Mm.
Now, as you might have noticed, today's talk is going to be about mirrors. How about, and if you're not comfortable doing it, just pass it and that's perfectly fine. What you see there. And maybe what you want to see there.
Wholeness.
Wholeness.
Do you want to say a word or just pass it?
I'm not sure what to say.
Just look in and see forgiveness.
Old age.
That's okay.
At least you're pretty.
I see old age too.
Wisdom.
You know, let me pause. Carla, what did you say?
I said, really? Old age.
But let me just pause and say, all three of you, everybody, I look at you and I see beauty. I see accomplishment. And I see women I really admire. So it's not just about, as you'll see what I talk about here too, it's not just about the fact that my face isn't 24 anymore. But who am I beyond that? I've grown. You know, these wrinkles came at a price, right? All of our wrinkles came at a price.
I was going to say that with the old age, though, I think of divinity. So everlasting divinity, you know, we're everlasting. Wisdom.
Encouragement.
Light.
Thanks.
Scared me. Didn't expect her to do that.
I know, that was a surprise.
So this song is called How Could Anyone? It's written by Libby Roderick. How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. As you're standing here before me, your loving is so beautiful. As you're standing here before me, you're completely whole. As you're standing here before me, your loving is a miracle. How deeply you're connected to my soul. Beautiful.
So, many of us have love-hate relationships with our mirrors. They give us valuable information. Is my hair okay? Is my lipstick on straight? But they also show us things we might prefer not to see, such as the ever-increasing effects of gravity on our facial muscles and our skin. We are all getting older. Some of us might have been beauties in our youth, and we see that that has faded. That can make us sad. Or we can perceive the beauty that age has brought us and the wisdom. But despite the variations of fluorescent versus incandescent light or sunlight, we can trust that our mirror shows us reality. There was a shrimpy little guy who lived in Jericho a long time ago. He was a Jew, but not one with a lot of friends. People mainly considered him a traitor because he was a chief tax collector for their chief nemesis, Caesar. When he looked in the mirror, he might have seen himself differently. He was a really rich guy, thanks to his position in a city that dealt in a lot of trade. Publicans, that is, tax collectors like him, often skimmed tax money off the top before they passed along whatever was owed to Caesar. People knew it, but they couldn't do anything about it. His mirror might have showed him his nice tunic, his more expensive than average haircut. He might have seen himself as a man of accomplishment and certainly a man of status. So it's fascinating then that the Gospel of Luke portrays him as a guy who was running ahead of the crowd of disdaining fellow Jews to shimmy his little self up a sycamore tree. It was hardly behavior befitting his social status. Why did he do that? He wanted to see who the heck that man named Jesus was. He knew that Jesus would be on his way to Jerusalem through Jericho on that very road in a few minutes. No chance Shorty could see over the crowd, and he didn't want to elbow his way to the front, so he climbed a tree. When Jesus walked by, he looked up and most unexpectedly said, "Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today." You can imagine the crowd's reaction. What's with this guy who could heal and raise people from the dead and sits at dinner with harlots and publicans? Zacchaeus, I found out through a little bit of reading, means pure. We don't know if his heart was pure before this meeting with Jesus, or rather that it had the capacity for purity. But this is how the passage reads in Luke 19. But Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, "Look, Lord, here and now I give half of my possessions to the poor, and if I have cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times that amount." Jesus served as a mirror to Zacchaeus, showing him a different way of looking at himself and then of living his life. Let's go back a few more centuries to the man we know as David. When we first hear about him, he was a kid with a lot of older brothers, stronger brothers. Yet it was he that was chosen to be king over all those bigger, seemingly more worthy guys. And it was he who stood up to the giant Goliath. Hello, welcome. Right after that, his mirror might have showed somebody who was kind of proud of himself. Not that he didn't know it was God who had made the triumph possible, but that he, young David, I guess scholars argue about his age, but they figure he was between 15 and 20. He had been the instrument of that massive triumph. That's kind of cool. But he didn't stay the golden boy for long. David had to run for his life from the man who had once pretty much called him a son, namely King Saul. And when David ultimately became king, he had triumph after more triumphs. It wouldn't be hard to smile into the mirror then, would it? After all, Saul had killed his thousands, but David killed his tens of thousands. That's what the people said about their hero, who was now their king. But then one day, David looked from his palace roof to one not too far away, and he saw a beautiful woman bathing. Already having a bunch of wives, he didn't really need more in the way of feminine interaction. But he asked about her, and he was told her name was Bathsheba, and she was married to Uriah, the Hittite, who served as an officer in David's army. Adultery was still adultery back then, despite the polygamy that was commonplace. Nonetheless, David had Bathsheba brought to the palace, where he had his way with her. It's not recorded how she felt about it. It almost never is, of course. Her own mirror might have showed some really convoluted emotions. The king wants me. The king chose me. But I'm Uriah's wife. I don't want to be unfaithful. I love Uriah. Bathsheba conceived, but the brilliant king had a plan so nobody would know he was the father. He had Uriah come to him from the distant battlefield, praised him, and told him, "Go home to your beautiful wife. Enjoy some time there." Then there would be a viable reason why Bathsheba was pregnant. But no. The king's scheming didn't work because Uriah was an honorable man. If the men under him could not be home enjoying their lives and their wives, he wouldn't either. So David invited him for a meal and got him drunk. "Now go home," David told him. Uriah wouldn't do it if his men couldn't do it. Outfoxed by simple honor and integrity, David apparently felt he had little choice. So he sent word to the main man on the battlefield, telling him to have Uriah go to the front line, and then the troops to retreat, leaving Uriah to be killed. Innocent, honorable Uriah was indeed killed. And despite Bathsheba's mourning, David took her for his wife. David might not have wanted to look into the mirror then, or maybe he did, silently complimenting himself on having formulated such an ingenious plan to get rid of Uriah and camouflage the adultery that he had perpetrated. But then came a human mirror named Prophet Nathan, whose words made David realize the baseness of what he had done. David was filled with deep and bitter remorse. He is said to have then written Psalm 51, which is one of the most beautiful in heart rendering. Included in it, it's pretty long, but included in it is, created me a pure heart, O God. Renew a steadfast spirit within me. Do not cast me from your presence or take your Holy Spirit from me. Restore to me the joy of your salvation and grant me a willing spirit to sustain me. Maybe then he looked in the mirror and saw the fully human person who had messed up royally and who paid a price in the death of his and Bathsheba's son, but who was still beloved of God. Let's go back further still in history and meet the guy we know as Moses. The Hebrew baby in the bulrushes, raised as an Egyptian prince, who later killed an Egyptian overseer who was abusing a Hebrew worker. He's got a big and a complicated story as it's related to us. But one aspect I found particularly fascinating. He was really unsure of himself. When God's voice came to him later in a burning bush, and I guess that's a pretty good way to get somebody's attention, telling Moses that it would be he who would deliver the Jews out of Egyptian captivity and cruelty. Moses didn't say, "Yay, let's go." No, he hemmed and he hawed and he gave a bunch of excuses why he was not the man for the job. People wouldn't listen to him, he said. He wasn't a powerful man or an entrancing speaker. Really, God, I'm not the man for the job. Then God did a bit of magic, proving that God could turn a stick into a snake, Moses' hand into a leprous one. God assured Moses that he'd never be working under his own power, but that I am who I am would be with him. Still, Moses tried to find it out. Picture this conversation, Moses and God. And still, Moses pointed out to God that he stuttered. Really, God, I'm not worthy. I'm not the one for this job. God didn't say, God's reaction, as the book of Exodus recounts, was interesting too. God didn't say, "Oh, my poor boy, how hard your early years must have been on you to give you such wobbly self-esteem." And God didn't say, "Yes, you're right. What was I thinking? You're too frail to undertake these tasks I'm setting before you. No problem." No, Moses apparently ticked God off big time. In Exodus 4:13 it reads, "So the anger of the Lord was kindled against Moses." And God said to use Aaron, his brother, as mouthpiece, but that God would put the words in Moses' mouth, and then Moses would tell Aaron who would broadcast them. How many times have I looked in the mirror and seen only my inadequacies? How many times have I backed out of challenges because I genuinely didn't believe I had what it took to do them? I just started working with a new client, a man who wrote a book about his spiritual struggles. When he asked me to help him, he prefaced his introduction to the project by telling me he's a terrible writer. He massacres the English language. He can't spell to save his life. He really wants his book to be a testimony of faith, but he just isn't much of a writer, so I would need to do a lot of the heavy lifting. So I was very surprised to read what I have to say is already a good book. He had used Grammarly and spell check and had caught some mistakes, but clearly he has serious talent as a communicator, as a writer. I reminded him what I remind myself when I'm feeling daunted by a project. You are a conduit. You are only a conduit of what God wants to convey. Get over yourself. Moses didn't have to be a Superman because God already was one. Moses simply needed to acknowledge his role as a vessel. But he couldn't do that. He saw only his weakness when he looked in the mirror. and clearly couldn't understand why God saw anything more than that. And maybe God didn't. Maybe Moses was a human potato sack of unfulfilled potential and stammering weakness. But it didn't matter. God wanted to use him. God made it clear that God would be calling the shots and providing the big guns when it came to persuading Pharaoh. It wouldn't be Moses. Moses really had nothing to do with what was about to happen. He just needed to get out of the way and let God work. How often are we in exactly that same situation? Somebody ticks us off in traffic and we can react in a human fashion. Or there's a kind of it of God. Somebody spouts venomous political opinions and we can react with what we might feel to be righteous indignation. Or we can pause and we can ask God how he would have us respond. In communicating with Vera and Rose today, about today, I asked that Vera not videotape me and put it on YouTube. Why? Because I could see the last time I served. I was a bobblehead, terrible posture. I was mortified when I saw the YouTube video. and I said, okay, never again, never again, never again. And then I started writing this and realized I was thinking exactly like Moses. I could be for a few minutes God's little mouthpiece up here, and then on YouTube to whomever might stumble on the video. Or I could say, no, I'm too imperfect to be used. Get over yourself, Valerie. This isn't about you. It's about your usefulness as a tool. A friend of mine works in the human services field. I asked him how he deals with God's offers for him to serve. What does that look like for him? He said he makes it a point to connect his eyes with those of even the most strung out or troubled person on the street. And then he says hello. He wants them to know he sees them. They're not invisible to him. And by extension, they're surely not invisible to God. He has anxiety disorder. So when he was asked to be a greeter at his church, he instantly balked. But then he decided to do it. His hands tremble, but he can smile. He can welcome people. He can serve. He can be a conduit. How do you all take up God's offers to serve? Or how is it hard for you? Any thoughts?
I don't know, it's not hard for me, I just do it. You know, whatever comes through me or whatever gets inspired or who crosses my path, I just do it. So I learned that maybe 20 years ago when I was reading a particular book on synchronicity. I can't remember the title now, but it said, like, whatever you're afraid of, just do it. So I made that commitment, and anything I'm afraid of, then I just automatically do it. It becomes easier each time. So it's, and it just opens my world to whatever degree. Otherwise, it's a very narrow path. If I just follow my fears, it's a very narrow path. So now the world is just big, wherever. Whatever is there, is there. Just experience it.
That's great.
I do the same thing. I might be afraid, but then when I do it, I'm happy that I did it.
Yeah.
I undertook a few months ago one project with somebody, and there's an element to this project of investigative reporter. I ain't one. I wrote human interest for the newspaper. I write soft stuff. I don't have the type of thinking that characterizes a really good investigative reporter, the skepticism, the global thinking of, what about this? What about that possibility? I don't have it. So I was really, I almost didn't, actually I tried to talk him out of it. Not me, so I'm not the person you want. But he eventually said, well, he kept saying over and over and over, yeah, you are. You're right for this job. And then I realized as I got into the project that it was a lot more elements than simply what it looked like on the outside. And in working with this individual, I've been introduced to one of the most beautiful souls I've ever met in my life. The enormity of his heart. His family, most of his family was killed in the Holocaust. His parents were survivors. He himself went through a lot. Nonetheless, he chooses to be beautiful. He's raised the bar on how I see my role in the world. There was a time, 1980s, I was a single parent, and I was poor. I was on welfare for 2 years, getting food stamps. It sucked. It was the most degrading, most humiliating time of my life, hopefully ever. And the kids and I were involved in a church, and we tithed, and we offered. And we would always make extra brownies when there was a fellowship. And then one day it occurred to me, we are by far the poorest people in this congregation. Hello? Why am I doing this? I owe it to my children to, be able to buy them better sneakers, etc. We would all, then I decided, okay, God will get it. God knows I don't want money. So I stopped. I stopped tithing. We minimally offered. And every Sunday I would bring somebody into the house who was lonely. And I stopped doing that too. It's like, they got food. They got more food than me. I stopped making extra brownies. And then I should have had more money, right? Logic. Should have had more money. I was as cheap as I always was. I could no longer make ends meet. And I know this for a fact. It makes no sense. Except that, of course, spiritually it does. I was meant to be a conduit of what I was given, of all of my resources. If I chose not to be a conduit, okay. But then it's not going to be as good a life. The kids and I always prayed before we went out shopping for school clothes or food. Always prayed. And we always got ridiculously good deals. We so beat the average for finding blue light specials at Kmart. And just this week, I needed a new refrigerator. The size, the shape, I wanted the same thing because I run kind of an informal food ministry, so I have a lot of stuff in my freezer. And it was going to be about $1,000. I was not thrilled. So I prayed. And then I went to Olam's and found one of their floor models. And then I have this really awful cat-scratched, stained love seat in my office. And I really wanted to replace that. Okay, found one of those, and it was 30% off because they have a special on stuff. And then found some other stuff that really, really, really needed replacing. It all came to right around $1,000. Okay, coincidence. I don't think so. We can be conduits or we cannot be conduits. How do you suppose God feels about that? I suspect He put us on the earth to smile, to give whatever we've got, whatever that is. My house on the south side of Binghamton, corner of Hayes and Belden, it's 19 townhouses. I use the word humble because I'm being nice to it. It's not a great house. Every single one of my friends has a better house. So I, for a long time, didn't really invite people over. I would meet them elsewhere. And I didn't invite clients over. I would meet them other places. Get over yourself, Valerie. God gave you this house. Now I use it. People will just about have to sit on their laps, on each other's laps in my kitchen if I have more than 4 people. Nobody has died yet, right? And nobody has complained about being squished. They all say, oh, your house is so welcome. It is that. It is humble, but it is welcome. We can choose to look in the mirror and see ourselves as God wants us to see ourselves. We all have things we can't do or think we can't do. Not that I think God will ever call on me to teach geometry, which I flunked. But I do have some strengths. And beyond that, I do have a willingness to be used. I can look in the mirror And I can see the highly imperfect, often weak, usually inconsistent, and mostly self-doubting human that I am. Or I can see Christ's potential looking back at me, reminding me that at my best and my most effective, I am a conduit, a tool in the hand of God, a pencil in the hand of God. I'm stealing from Mother Teresa. A little pencil in the hand of God who is writing a love letter to the world. Thank you. Any thoughts? Anybody have anything to add or subtract?
I wanted to say the mirror reminded me of Louise Hay, and I've read some of her writings, and she likes to encourage people to use a mirror or look in the mirror and say, I love you to yourself, to your image. And just do that like maybe every morning for a while and see what happens. And just say, I love you.
That's valuable. All right, and it is time.
She wanted to say
Oh,
something,
I'm sorry.
Karen.
I was just going to say I appreciated your words and I related to them very much, especially because I was shy and I used to speak and I took risks and I was younger and I didn't have some of the life experiences that challenged me back then. So I kind of plowed ahead. And then as I shared here a couple of weeks ago, I sort of fell back out of that, got silent again, and then I get, propelled forward with it. And what helped me was remembering when I was going for counseling training, and it was actually a former client of mine, and he said, it's progress, not perfection. And that is such a 12-step phrase that is so helpful, that you just take that risk and move forward through whatever feels like it's holding you back either internally or impacted by the external experiences, and just move through it and recognize that that progress does come through the imperfections. And the more you do it, then things get better. And you may fall back, but you've had that experience of falling back and moving forward again. So just the wisdom in that statement, progress, not perfection. Thank you for reminding me of that.
Well,
Again.
sometimes I have to think there was one perfect person on the planet. Why do I expect me to be number two? You know? I mean, sometimes we hold ourselves to such a high bar. And when you fall short, you just want to crucify yourself. It's like, no, get over yourself. You're not capable of perfection. You know, that's a mouthful. That is really a mouthful, because a lot of us are wrapped up in wanting to be, if I'm not here, then I'm not. No. Anybody else?
We need a new definition of perfection,
Yeah.
so that we can see that it's not maybe what we think it is, and it can be anything. Everything can be perfect. So if we get away from that box, that holds us in, and then self-judgment, we can then just accept everything as perfect and good, and don't have to keep reaching these heights. It's really, in many ways, it's kind of silly until we step back and look at ourselves, just like wasting your time.
That's it. And wasting what we were given to use.
Yeah, just do it. Just use whatever you have and be grateful, and God loves you no matter what.
We were all made in God's image. God's perfect. We're not. But we're made in God's image.
Right.
We must be okay for whatever tasks have been reset before us. So, how about if we say together the love offering?
Thank you.